Hi, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to give it another 30 seconds for folks to log on, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for joining us. All right, welcome, everyone. We have a jam-packed session for you today, so we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Amber Haskell, and I'm the Vice President and Executive Director of the Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce Foundation, and I have the pleasure of overseeing our Small Business Strong initiative. Thank you so much for joining us for our Small Business Strong Navigating Tariffs webinar. At the Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce Foundation, we are dedicated to supporting small businesses across the Commonwealth through multiple initiatives, including our Small Business Webinar series that you're on today. First and foremost, we would like to thank the State Street Foundation for their continued support of small businesses and their dedication to helping all small businesses across the country grow and thrive. I would also like to thank the Acceleration Project for partnering with us on this afternoon's presentation, and we know that this has been a hot topic that many of you have been talking to us about. Before I pass it over to the Acceleration Project, I just have a couple of quick housekeeping items. Firstly, this webinar is being recorded and will be shared with you all and on the Chamber's YouTube page shortly after the presentation. We will not be sharing slides. For those of you who are joining us live, please submit your questions throughout the webinar using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen, making sure to send to all panelists. Or if you prefer email, you can send your questions to foundation@bostonchamber.com. I will be on at the end of the presentation to put as many of these questions as possible to our presenters. And with that, I am pleased to pass it over to Jack Murphy to introduce today's speakers in session.
Thanks, Amber. Hey, y'all. My name is Jack. I'm our Vice President of Programs and Partnerships at the Acceleration Project. It's a joy to be with you today. I know for entrepreneurs, time is your most precious asset, so thank you so much for spending it here with us. A bit about the Acceleration Project. So we are a nonprofit organization. We serve small business owners across the country and aim to provide high-impact small business coaching and technical assistance, especially in the spirit of building wealth and economic mobility for underserved communities. We work with incredible consultants and coaches on our bench, and we have two of them here today who are just absolute powerhouses. I'm so excited to be introducing them. Can move to the next slide. Lori Dennis is a seasoned consumer electronics and gaming leader, formerly at Altec Lansing and Plantronics, and most recently head of global consumer sales at Poly. She's led global teams to grow retail and e-commerce partnerships and launch new lines of business. She has hands-on experience navigating tariffs in the tech and hardware supply chain and is an active member of the Consumer Technology Association. Next is Joan Gia. Joan owns and manages Hastings Tea and Coffee in White Plains, New York, a thriving shop she has run for 12 years, drawing on 20 plus years in finance, 15 plus years as a real estate investor, and leadership in prop tech. She brings hands-on small business expertise, including adapting to tariffs, alongside financial expertise developed through her corporate and startup roles. So you're in very good hands with Lori and Joan today. And before I turn it over to Lori, I'm going to once again thank the Chamber for their partnership here and for bringing the best of small business coaching to the Greater Boston small business ecosystem. So very thankful to the Chamber and thankful to all of you for your time once again. So I will turn the floor over to you, Lori.
Thank you so much, Jack. Hello, I want to add my welcome, and why don't we jump in because we have a lot to cover today. So today we're going to touch on the following topics in today's presentation. We're going to examine what are tariffs. We're going to review the policy timeline in 2025 and tariff payment overview. We're going to discuss strategies you can implement to manage tariffs as a small business. We'll share some real business scenarios. We're going to present a tariff response checklist. And lastly, we will have a Q&A session. Next slide, please. So what are tariffs? A tariff is defined as a tax imposed by one country on goods imported from another country to raise revenues or protect competitive advantages. For a small business, tariffs raise your costs and can impact your prices and profit margins. Next slide, please. Here is a simplified timeline of the 2025 tariff policy. The president put in a baseline tariff of 10% under the International Emergency Economics Powers Act, for short called EPA, on most imports in early April. The administration added higher tariffs on certain items in early summer. The government ended de minimis exemption in late August, and by ending the de minimis exemption, all small, low-value imports are no longer duty-free. All shipments, regardless of value, are now subject to tariffs and customs processing. In late August, a U.S. appeals court ruled tariffs unlawful. In early November, the Supreme Court started hearing the arguments on these cases, and we believe by June of next year, a final ruling on tariffs should be expected. The bottom line is tariffs are still in effect. Next slide, please. Thank you. Now that we've looked at how tariff policy has evolved, let's ground it with a few quick numbers. First, the big picture. In fiscal year 2025, customs duties totaled roughly $195 billion, a huge number that shows just how much tariffs are shaping trade and pricing today. There's been a record month. In August 2025 alone, duties hit a record $30.1 billion. This highlights how concentrated and volatile duty collections can be over short periods. The tariff levels by the end of 2025, the average effective tariff rate will reach the high teens, the highest in decades. In other words, companies are operating in one of the toughest duty environments we've seen in a very long time. Now, the impact on prices. In early 2025, estimates indicated about 60 to 80% of new tariffs flowed through to consumer prices. This gives a sense of how these policies are showing up on the store shelves. Now, before we move on, we'll dig into how tariff rates are set and how they vary by category. But first, let's take a quick poll. We would love to get a sense of how you are feeling about tariffs right now and whether they're already affecting your cost. So please scan the QR code up, if you can go back. Thank you. Please scan the QR code, or you can text 22333 with TAP org 768. And our first poll is a word cloud. So please tell us in one word how tariffs are making you feel right now. As everyone answers, you'll see the most common response grow bigger on the screen. The larger the word, the more people feel the same way. So, of course, not surprising, worried, uncertain, overwhelmed, uneasy, nervous, curious. Absolutely. I mean, these are all things I think we all are going through right now as a small business, wondering what will be next as far as tariffs. Okay, next we would like to ask you guys a question. And the question is, have tariffs affected your business? Yes, they've raised my costs. Not yet, but they will. No, my business isn't affected. I'm not sure. So let's see what we have so far. Okay. Yes, I assume that yes, they probably erase cost. If not, yes, now, probably not yet, but they will, as we can see here. Would love to know the business that's not affected by tariffs. Okay, let's move on. We're now going to discuss strategies you can implement to manage tariffs as a small business. So what actually determines the tariff on a product? Before we look at the specific tariff rates, it's helpful to understand how those rates are determined. Imports start with a 10% baseline tariff. This default tariff has been applied to all imports from all countries effective April 5th, 2025. Then, if applicable, a reciprocal tariff can replace the baseline tariff. Tariffs are applied based on where the product is made and that country's trade relationship with the US. And as we all know, it seems to be changing weekly, if not monthly. Last, if the country is listed in the executive order for a higher reciprocal tariff rate, then that rate replaces the baseline rate. For example, Cambodia at 19% or India at 50% override the baseline of 10%. Then, based on the Harmonized Tariff Schedule Code, shortened for HTS, tariffs can be modified by additional duties or exemptions. If the product's HTS is subject to additional tariffs or surtaxes, these are added on top of the reciprocal or baseline tariff, increasing the final tariff. If the product's HTS code is exempt, the tariff rate is reduced to 0. If neither exemption nor additional tariffs apply, the reciprocal baseline rate stands as the final tariff. And I guess the one example we could give is kind of with China, with the fentanyl tax, or when it was pushed. So that would be kind of an additional tariff on top of everything else. Okay. I'm so sorry, I lost my place. Reciprocal tariff rates with top U.S. trading partners. So let's take a look at the reciprocal tariff rate the U.S. is applying to its top trading partners in 2025. These tariffs are part of the government's strategy to address trade imbalances. So the rates vary depending on the country and recent trade agreements. So for example, the United Kingdom is at 10%, while Japan and the EU face a 15% rate. Canada is around 35% on certain goods, while Mexico has been threatened with a 30% tariff. Currently, it's at 25%. Vietnam's rate was recently set at 20% following a new agreement, and the Philippines are in the 19% range. One thing to keep in mind is that these reciprocal tariffs often stack on top of other product-specific tariffs, which can add layers of cost for importers. It's important for business to keep an eye on these rates and any ongoing trade negotiations because they directly impact pricing and supply chain strategies. Now, before we move on, I do want to touch on the China rate evolution over 2025 since it has changed. So, April 2nd, 2025, the baseline 10% went into effect. China was removed from that baseline and was hit with a 34% reciprocal tariff. Then 7 days later, on April 9th of 2025, that reciprocal tariff jumped to 125%. And with stacking, the effective rate reached about 145%. Then on May 12th of 2025, the US and China agreed to a 90-day tariff truce, dropping back to the 10% baseline effective May 14th. On August 11th, the 10% tariff rate was extended for another 90 days, delaying a return to a 34% tariff. And then on October 30th, after Trump's visit with the Chinese president, another extension pushed the 10% rate now through November 10th of 2026. So if no further deals would have been reached, the tariff would have always reverted back to 34% after each truce expiration. But you can see by this example how in a matter of 6 months, we went through 6 or 7 different tariff rates and now we're back to the regular one. So it's something that we really have to look at, if not weekly, then monthly, because it can change based on the agreements with the countries. Next slide, please. This slide provides a breakdown of U.S. tariffs by industry sector, along with the relevant harmonized tariff schedule code ranges for 2025. The HDS codes are the standard classification used to specify product types for tariff purposes. You'll notice that tariff rates vary within each sector because not all products are treated the same. We're going to do another poll, so I think a QR code is going to pop up again on the next slide. Thank you. And so please take a picture of the QR code or scan the text org 768. Now this poll is which category matters most to your business? And please click all that apply, whether it's apparels and textiles, food, agriculture, furniture, household goods, steels, metals, electronics, and semiconductors. If your category is not up here and it is other, please provide exactly what it is in the chat. So here we're kind of mostly food and agriculture, followed by some textiles, and of course, electronics and semiconductors. Okay. So here are the results. So kind of almost everyone. So that's kind of good. A full array of different categories. Next slide, please. We're now going to chat about anti-dumping and countervailing duties, abbreviated as AD/CVD. Anti-dumping and countervailing duties are extra tariffs the U.S. adds when imports are priced unfairly. Anti-dumping applies when a company sells products here in the U.S. below fair market value. Countervailing applies when a foreign government is subsidizing its companies and giving them an unfair advantage when they ship here into the States. Both are meant to level the playing field for the U.S. businesses. So let's talk about who does what. The International Trade Commission, ITC, decides whether U.S. companies are being hurt by imports. The Commerce Department, the DOC, sets the duty rates, first a preliminary rate, then a final one. And then the U.S. Customs and Border Protection Agency, CPB, collects the money, taking deposits up front and reconciling the final amount later. What does this mean to you as a small business? These duties apply to specific products from specific countries. It's not a one size that fits all. As an importer, you pay a cash deposit when goods enter the United States, and the final bill can change months later. Sometimes more is owed, sometimes you get a refund. Even if your item isn't the exact one listed, you can still be included if it's close enough in scope. The definition matters. So what can you do? First, ask your customs broker, are there any anti-dumping or countervailing duties for this HTS code and country? And what cash deposit rate applies? Second, document your sourcing. Get written confirmation from your supplier on the true country of origin and whether any government subsidies are involved. Also, keep your HTS classification notes on file. Lastly, plan for some cost swings. Build in a small budget buffer and keep two price sheets, one where there's anti-dumping and countervailing duties included, and one without, so you're ready either way. Next slide, please. So you might have read in the news this week about the U.S. Commerce Department announcing a 92% anti-dumping duty on pasta made in Italy by 13 companies. And these 13 companies import most of the pasta from Italy into the United States. That is on top of the Trump administration's 15% tariff on any imports from the European Union or the EU, which of course Italy's part of. So stacked, the new tariff is 170% tariffs. So again, quite interesting that here we have a great example that's pretty current as to why you really have to make sure that your products that you are bringing in from your suppliers do not have any AD or CVD orders against them. Okay, now let's look at how tariffs are actually paid because this can be confusing, especially if you buy from wholesalers instead of importing the products yourself. When goods arrive in the US, tariffs are paid right away at the port of entry. The rate is based on the day the shipment lands in the United States, not when you place the order. So if the tariffs rise while your goods are quote unquote on the water or in transit, the higher rate still applies. For an importer of record, usually the distributor or manufacturer will pay the tariff to the U.S. Customs and Border Protection Agency through a licensed customs broker. That broker handles the paperwork and payment, then passes the costs along the supply chain through higher wholesale prices. Even if you don't import directly, it's useful to know this process because it explains why suppliers' prices can jump suddenly and why timing matters. I think there's more to this slide. Thank you. And well, there you go. If you ever do import yourself, you're legally responsible for classifying products correctly and paying the duties. The proof of payment is Customs and Border Patrol Agency Form 7501, the entry summary document. Sometimes importers should keep something that importers should definitely keep for their records. Okay, one more slide for me. So let's talk about staying updated on tariffs. To find the exact tariff on a product, start with the Harmonized System or HTS code. This is actually an international number used to classify goods. You can look it up on the U.S. International Trade Commission's website, which lists current tariff rates and effective dates. Please keep in mind, categories can be tricky. Even similar products can have different rates depending on how they're classified, what they're made of, or where they're manufactured. So let me give you a real life example. I worked for a company and we actually made gaming headsets for consoles. Think of Xbox, PlayStation, Wii. And we were manufacturing headsets in China. And one of the headsets had an additional adapter in the box. Can figure out which console that was. But the classification for the like product actually had two different HTS numbers and unfortunately two different tariffs. So one little change in a product could change the tariff and unfortunately even make it more expensive. Sometimes it could be cheaper, which would be great too. So it's really important for you to kind of know what your HTS code is, and more important, to make sure that your wholesaler doesn't switch countries or whatever that could then change the tariff rate. For broader updates, visit the USTR website for new tariff actions and use TradeGov's FTA tariff tool to check if lower rates apply to trade partners. The key point is tariff rates are public and searchable. Knowing where to check helps you if supplier price changes match tariff updates. And just real quickly, another thing I want to chat about is the fact that tariffs are paid on what's called the landed costs, right? What your wholesaler or manufacturer brings in. Now, granted, a lot of these tariffs are going to be passed on 100% to you, the small business, which is what it is. But more importantly, make sure your wholesaler and manufacturer are not profiting off of the tariff. So, for example, if you pay $100 and it's a 20% tariff, you should not be paying $20, right, on your $100 cost, because I can assure you the landed cost, which is where the tariff could be, say it's $80. So the landed cost is only 16, or the tariff is only $16, not 20. So really make sure that you're not look at where the country origin is, the HTS code. Make sure you're not paying the tariff on your costs, because your manufacturer or wholesaler should not be making a profit off of tariffs. Okay, I will now turn it over to Joy, who will share some practical strategies and real world examples of how tariffs affect small businesses.
Okay, thank you, Laurie. Now you have a good understanding of tariffs. let's dive into the general strategy to manage tariff for your business. There are two main ways to manage the impact of tariffs. One is operational, one is financial side. On the operational side, like what Lori was saying, make sure you review your supply chain to see where the costs are rising. Don't forget to negotiate with your suppliers on the terms. Have them justify the increase in the price very specifically, like what Lori went through in the earlier slides. Even sometimes ask them to give you the written proof of the price increase. Second, explore the alternative vendors or material and adjust your product mix if certain items have become too costly. On the financial side, make sure your numbers reflect the current cost. Update your cost and margin and revisit your pricing, which we'll talk about in upcoming slides. And make sure you track and safeguard your cash flow. The goal here is to stay proactive, understand where tariffs are hitting your business, and adjust operations and finance before they squeeze your profitability. Next slide. Okay. If you're not importing goods directly, I think based on the poll, most of them are not. You're still feeling the effect of tariff just down the road. Most of the wholesalers and distributors have raised their price to cover their own higher import cost. So even if you're not paying the tariff yourself, you're paying more for the goods you're buying. So in order to manage your finance properly, let's make sure you are, number one, recalculate cost of the goods sold, the famous COGS. Start by revisiting your actual cost. If supplier's price has gone up, your product cost and your profit margin has changed. In this example, we put it on the sheets. A product that sells for $16 originally cost at $10 to make. When the key components increase by 15%, from $4 to $4.60, your cost rises to $10.60. If your selling price stayed the same, your gross margin falls from $6 to $5.40. That's a 10% decrease in your gross margin. This may sound small, but as I am a small business owner myself, when you actually selling this in the tens of thousands of units, it adds up very quickly. Second, make sure you adjust the pricing strategy. Once you know the COGS, you can either absorb some of the increase to stay competitive, or you can pass along some of them to the customer, or to do a repackaging or bundle the product to increase the perceived value without changing your main price point. Third, watch your cash flow. When the supply prices rise, your invoice get larger and your cash cycle can get tightened up. Keep a cash cushion for flexibility so you are not caught short covering the high cost. Number 4, track and forecast. Run the quick what-if scenario in a spreadsheet or a bookkeeping application. Model what happened if supply price rise another 10%, or if your sales dip slightly. This simple exercise helps you see the impact early and plan your next move before it becomes a real problem. So we talk about the pricing strategy. It is important to understand that the pricing adjustment don't have to be made to the exact item hit by tariffs. Now we're bringing up the manual engineer matrix to help you look at your product based on two things: how popular they are and how profitable they are. What you do is map them, your products, according to their sales. The y-axis is about the popularity of your product, and the x-axis is about the profitability of your product. So when the tariff raise your cost, this tool helps you decide where to adjust the price. The star items on the right-hand side, which is high profit and high sales. This is the area you can often handle small price increase. The workhorse on the left-hand side is they sell very well, but they make less profit. So find ways to manage their cost instead. The puzzle category at the bottom may have strong margins but low sales, a good place to promote or repackaging before raising the price. And then last one is the dog. These are the low profit, low sales item. Maybe this is a great opportunity for you to cut them from your menu to focus on the better performers. The message here is that you can offset higher costs strategically by, for example, modestly raise prices on high margin star items. And so even if they don't have the ingredients that are directly impacted by the tariff, while keeping the others stable to maintain the customer loyalty. Next slides. Okay, so let's take a look at a real business case, a local coffee shop here, which is it's one of my own shop, a local coffee shop called Hastings Tea and Coffee here in New York. I put it out 3 product examples over here. Coffee latte and pumpkin spice latte are the star items, and then fresh brewed coffee is a workhorse product. Next page, please. So at the coffee shop, we started seeing the impact of the tariff when our wholesale coffee beans went up about 15%. Rather than raising every price on the menu, we look at the menu engineer approach we just discussed. We look at the core product, like the fresh brewed coffee, which is what brings customer in every morning. So high volume, low profit product. So we decided to keep the price the same to stay competitive, especially we have 3 Starbucks around us to compete with. For the higher margin item, the star we talk about, like the coffee latte and the pumpkin spice latte, they make modest price. So we made a modest price adjustment. The latte went about 30 cents, and the pumpkin spice, which is seasonal specials, went up a little bit more. And we also make sure we're checking all the competitors around us to make sure the pricing adjustment we're staying in line with the market, and to make sure we also talk with the wholesalers about the items to smooth out the cash flow. And another thing I forgot to mention is we negotiated with the wholesalers that they will absorb some of the price increase, not passing along the entire 15% to us. All these changes help offset the higher coffee bean cost, but stay competitive and maintain the customer satisfaction. So the idea here is to raise the price across, isn't about raising the price across the board. It was to make selective, strategic adjustment that balancing the customer loyalty, stay competitive, while maintaining the profit margin. Okay, so we just saw how Hastings Tea and Coffee protect the margin by negotiating with the vendors, hold the fresh brewed coffee price, and adjust the latte prices. From this example, the lesson is not just protecting margins, but also readiness for change. Here's how you can be ready. Have 2 price sheets, sheet A and sheet B. Sheet A, including today's tariffs and supply surcharge. Sheet B is so-called ready to go. Remove and adjust those items so you can switch the day that the change hits. Set up the clear trigger for the swap. A supplier email with a new item, a posted tariff decision, or an AD CVD that we talked about earlier, updates from your brokers. Review and refresh both sheets regularly so margin don't drift. However, before you switch, make sure confirm the effective date and time, sync the menu cards, website, POS, invoices, everything together. Lastly, make sure your team knows what they have to say and explain to the customers. Hastings Tea and Coffee moved quickly because we were prepared. 2 pricing sheets make the speed possible for you. No rebuilding spreadsheet, just switch when the trigger hits. Okay. So we've been focused on the pricing adjustment. However, how you communicate with the customers matters just as much as the price change itself. Started by be transparent. A short, honest explanation goes a long way. Something as simple as our supply cost has gone up due to the recent tariff. Or saying something, we've adjusted some prices to reflect the higher cost from our distributor. Keep your message simple and direct. A single sentence on your menu, website, or sign can be just enough. Always remember to reinforce the value. Remind the people what hasn't changed. Your quality, your service, your commitment to the local business and to them. Finally, offering some options to make customer feel they still have the control. Things like, creating some bundles, loyalty rewards, low-cost alternatives. If you can, add some flexibility. For example, pre-order discount or subscriptions or loyalty program to help the customer stay connected even as price adjusts. The goal is to maintain trust and show that you are adapting thoughtfully, not just passing cost along. So TAB is fortunately to have a bank executive from Mitsubishi UFJ Financial Group, abbreviation as MUFG, on our President's Council. Through that connection, we had an opportunity to speak with a senior U.S. economist there. Here is their high-level perspective on the impact of a tariff on the economy and our takeaway of what could mean for small businesses. At the direct level, as you can see this, tariff raises costs on importing goods. That's what business feel right away. But over time, there are broader ripple effects. Or what we're showing here is a second-order impact. As tariff works through the supply chain, they can push price higher across the economy and slow overall growth. When that happens, higher price combined with a slow GDP growth, economists call that as a stagflation. That is MUFG's current outlook. Stagflation is tough because it squeezes business from both sides. Higher cost, but also lower demand because the customer also start to spend less. In that kind of environment, the Federal Reserve could continue lower the interest rate further to support the growth, which could bring down borrowing cost. But at the same time, lender may become more cautious. So access to small business loan might get more difficult. The takeaway is that tariffs don't just raise supply cost. They can reshape the entire business environment, affecting pricing, customer demands, and small business finance options. So let's step back and look at the possible Supreme Court outcomes and what they could mean for your next step. If the tariffs are upheld, nothing change, keep carbon price and plans that assume tariffs stay. If tariffs are struck down, no stay, tariff and on the court's effective date, switch to your no tariff list that day, and the refund might happen, but they may not. That's not a guarantee, so don't count on it in your budget. If tariffs are struck down with a stay, the ruling is paused, so tariffs still apply for now. Don't reprice yet, watch the date. If the ruling is mixed and modified, some countries and products change, others don't. Update your most important high-duty item first and test before roll out widely. So again, this is an ongoing risk, right? Even if this tariff for new rules and quotas can appeal, do a quick weekly check-in with your brokers or wholesaler so that you are not caught off guard. Make sure before you change your price, confirm when your wholesaler will reprice and remove any tariff surcharge. If possible, you can even request it in writing. And make sure it's one pager or email or anything like that. The price list, the version, the date, and any temporary promotions they will offering during the transition. Okay, next page, please. Let's do our last poll for today. So again, scan the QR code or text. Do we have anyone click on it yet? Yeah. Okay. Adjusting, payroll, prices. Yep. Good. Pricing and the customer. Yes, absolutely. Lots of payroll. Yeah. Adjusting. Okay. Let's move on to the next page. Okay. We have this slides is really it's a quick reference for where to focus first if tariff or supplier price increase start to affect your business. As what we talk about, we walk through three key areas: vendors, financials, and the customers. We start with the vendors right here. This is usually where the impact shows up first. Ask whether you can renegotiate the terms or share some of the added cost. If demand feels unpredictable, revise your order sizes so you are not holding excessive inventory or tightening up cash. Always explore whether there are alternative or maybe domestic suppliers who can reduce your exposures to tariff or shipping volatility. Next, review your financials. We talk about COGS. Make sure you update your COGS to include tariff-related increase so you are seeing your true profit margin. Ask yourself if you're still making enough on each sale. Identify any of the non-essential expenses you can defer while costs are high. For pricing, evaluate whether the modest price increase makes sense or whether you can add value through bundles or product mix instead of across the board increase. Make sure you're keeping an eye on your competitors are doing. It can guide your pricing decision. And finally, check your cash flow, make sure you have enough cash and cash reserve, and possibly increase your cash reserve to make sure you have enough to deal with the volatility coming through tariff. Finally, think about your customers. Be clear and transparent when explaining pricing change. People appreciate honesty when you connected with them in a straightforward and transparent way. You can also soften the impact by offering low-cost alternatives or loyalty discount. The main takeaway here is manage tariff effectively means taking action at every level with your vendors, inside your financials, and through how you communicate with your customers. As a small business owners, you don't get to choose what happens in Washington or in the global trade negotiation or with the Supreme Court, but you do have control over how you respond. The goal isn't to predict every policy change. It's to build a business that can adapt quickly, protect your margin, and stay connected with your customers no matter what happens next. So thank you for joining us and for the work you do every day to keep our economy and the great Boston economy strong. We're going to now open up for Q&A. Thank you.
Wonderful. First and foremost, thank you, Joan and Lori, for this presentation. I've taken a lot of notes, but we do have a couple questions. For those of you who have questions, don't forget you can go right into that Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. But the first question I have is, during the pandemic, I noticed that many businesses were frequently raising their prices in an effort to stay competitive. For consumers, however, this was often a daunting experience. What advice would you give to a business that wants to avoid constant price increases and instead take a more strategic approach to adjusting those prices?
I can try to give an answer since I went through the pandemic myself. To lead our retail business, survive out of the pandemic. I think the key thing is you want to be, number one, be honest to your consumers. Do not utilize the time to, making extra profit. Number two is you don't want to adjust the price across the board, like what I was talking about earlier. Do it strategically, very specific. Choose the items that you definitely need to actually increase, but still stay competitive and increase those. And then not increase certain items because you know that's going to impact your volume, which is also the important part of your business. So again, it's manual engineering and understand your COGS, understand your pricing so that you do it very thoroughly and specifically across your menu.
Another question we have is it possible to try to reconfigure your break-even point on the number of items you would need to sell to make a profit versus having to raise the price? So I guess this is a question also kind of about volume. What would be the pro and con of this strategy?
So I can take that one. We always suggest that you maintain two price sheets, one with tariffs and one without, and kind of use this scenario guardrails that, and manage. I mean, it's very important to run your P&L, right, on each product you have, because maybe what you can do if it's only one product, but it's not a big seller, maybe you just even not sell it anymore, or you do have to raise the price on that one. I think the point is that everyone is raising prices because tariffs are going to hit everyone. So I don't think you should be that concerned because you need to be profitable or you won't be around in 2 or 3 years to sell anything. So our suggestions would be is to really run your P&L on each product specific, and then maybe you can either maybe not sell that one if you're really interested in keeping all your prices the same, but I think that with inflation and with the tariffs, it's really, really tough to keep things whole and keep prices steady and not really hurt your profit margins.
Have you seen tariffs lead to small businesses finding new or alternative US based suppliers, which, I guess really is the goal of tariffs in the first place, right? Is protecting US industry.
I'll try to answer that. Yes, I'm as a business owner myself, I'm constantly looking for different wholesalers, different source of suppliers out there. If this is, I think this may be one of the reason that we are looking at the U.S. source. If their U.S. source is more competitive, I would rather go with them because not only the pricing, but also there's a shipping cost, right? Related to that.
Absolutely.
And also, just to add on to that, we have to remember that if you're paying a 20% tariff coming in, say, from Vietnam, but you can find a US based supplier or manufacturer that's only going to charge you 15%, then it might be worth the five, you're still going to be ahead 5%. So I think that's something you have to look at.
One question that I've kind of heard from some of the food-based businesses that the Chamber Foundation works with is really like, at what point do I have to pass this off to the consumer? I'm seeing prices raise. I'm trying to keep them, like pay for them myself, but at what margin point do you say, "Hey, I really have to pass this off to my customer?"
Personally, I do not see as a specific number to trigger it. It all goes back to the menu engineering, right? It is what are the things that based on your popularity and the profitability that you can absorb versus actually small increase and versus some of them you have to go with a larger increase. And I always saying to my own actually fellow business owners as well and myself is this is a great opportunity to get rid of those ones that you're not making a lot of money, and then you should take this opportunity, take it off your menu, so you don't actually constantly giving more actually money out to the consumers or to the other business.
Right. Focus on the thing you're good at and that you're going to sell.
That's right.
Um, Along those lines, a lot of people were kind of getting the advice of like, hey, before the tariffs kind of kick in even higher, buy now, right? Like buy those raw materials or like, if you're a cafe, buy those cups now. And then the question is, okay, do I put this on my business credit card? Do I take out a loan to be able to do that to weather the prices? Any thoughts on, going into debt in order to kind of take advantage to the state of limbo that some of the tariffs are in?
Well, I would suggest if you're buying Italian pasta from one of those 13 companies, yeah, you're probably better off to take out a small loan or on your credit card because 107% tariff could just kill you. But I think with the example we gave with China, how it's so volatile, and now China is pushed off for an entire year. My opinion would be that if in fact you're buying and the product comes from China, I'm not really sure you should be taking on debt because I think the price will probably stay pretty consistent now with 6 months from now. So I think you have to kind of look at the HTS code, kind of figure out if there's any anti-dumping, for example, the pasta situation. And if there's really not, again, I don't foresee unless you're getting, a no interest credit card for 6, 12 months. But my
Right.
guess is that the increase would probably be less than what you're going to pay on your credit card.
Um, Another question that just came in, how can we leverage free trade agreements to reduce tariff costs?
So I guess the question is, there's nothing we can really do with free trade agreements. I mean, we do have free trade agreements still with Canada and Mexico on certain items. So I don't know if there's any, you can look that up, but, I don't think pasta coming from Mexico is going to be any different than pasta coming from somewhere else. So I think it's what you're actually purchasing. Because just to let you know, a lot of the North American free trade agreement is still in effect in Canada and in Mexico, even though we hear differently on the news or on a social media site. So you just really have to check. There's still a lot of things that are zero coming into the country. There's always exemptions.
That's a great reminder. Don't make assumptions, check first.
Yes, that's a great
Um,
idea.
are there any state or government, federal government programs or grants that support small businesses who are affected by these tariffs?
I am not aware of that yet, even though there are talks about giving some refunds, giving some certain, support from but nothing is truly coming in yet. But I don't know whether, Lori, you heard anything else. I
No,
haven't.
I have not. But I think it's important to just keep checking. I think checking the federal sites is the most important now that everyone will be back at work. Hopefully next week they'll be updated. Because some of the HTS codes were not updated, right? Considering like the deal with China in late October during the shutdown. But yeah, I think it's just to really look, and those federal sites is what the actual is, not maybe what you're seeing on a poster in the news all the time.
Wonderful. Well, um, I want to thank Joan and Lori, you both, and Jack for doing the intro and for being with us today and this afternoon to talk about this incredibly interesting and challenging, you know, thing to navigate that tariffs are. And thank you so much for that information and breaking everything down for us so that we can better understand how to, you know, insulate ourselves and our small businesses. Um, for those of you who have joined us um, live, there is a survey code that is up right now. If you could please scan the code and take that survey, it just helps all of us understand how we can better improve sessions like this going forward. Our Small Business Strong initiative has a number of ways to support your small business. We have webinars and in-person sessions that go on throughout the year. If you are interested in learning more, please go to gbccfoundation.org to learn more about our events and our programming. If you or someone you know own or run a small business and are looking for some one-on-one support, please visit or check out our First Call program. Through First Call, the Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce Foundation will match you with a small business advisor in your local area to help you with whatever your most needed item for your business is, and will help connect you to other local resources for support. And again, you can find the link for that at gbccfoundation.org. On the website, you can also sign up for our newsletter to learn more about programs like this and other local resources that are here to support your small business. Thank you again to the Acceleration Project and, of course, to State Street Foundation for their continued support. We hope you enjoy the rest of your afternoon.